TV. Welcome to another episode where today we are in the kitchen and I'm going to show you how to make your very own bread, whole wheat, 100% all natural from scratch. The first time somebody taught me how to make my own bread, it sounded like something completely foreign to me, like just completely impossible, and like it was this long, drawn out, complex process. But everything you see right here is all the ingredients you need. So one of the things that I want to go over of why I chose to start making my own homemade bread as opposed to buying store-bought bread is because if you look at the ingredients that go into your store-bought bread, you're probably going to see about a paragraph long of things that don't even make sense. So with the flours that I have here, and I'm going to go over this really quick and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the ingredients. I have 100% whole grain whole wheat flour. A lot of whole wheat flours that you buy in the store are not just 100% whole wheat flour. So when you're buying it, this is a great brand. Look at the ingredients, and all it says on here is 100% hard whole wheat flour. That's it. So you want to make sure whatever brand you get, that's all that's in there. There shouldn't be anything else. I also use a mix of half whole wheat, half all-purpose flour just because of the dough consistency. So with this, I have organic, all-purpose, unbleached flour. So unbleached is highly important, and again, when you flip over to the ingredients, it should just say organic, unbleached flour. That should be the only ingredient, one thing. But, so one of the things with the unbleached that's super important that I actually learned a while ago, one of the things that makes your flours between white flour and wheat flour is it has to go through a bromate process, which is a bleaching process. And what that means is that it's literally something they do that is only legal in the US. Other countries like Europe, the United Kingdom, all that, you're not even allowed to do it because it's so not natural and unhealthy for you. But they make the flour, they take the barley, they take the wheat, they put it through mills, they grind it up so that it looks like flour. But then in order to make bleached white flour, which is in a lot of the processed foods and the store-bought breads that you buy, they literally have to bleach it. So think of like bleaching your clothes. They're bleaching the flour, and then they have to add all the nutrients that come from that, like niacin, riboflavin, things like that. They have to add it back into it, which is why if you probably have flour at home, if you look on the back of the ingredients, you're gonna see bleached or enriched flour. The reason they have to put that on the label is because they had to literally take the natural organic source of it, bleach it and strip it of all of its nutrients, and then to make it white, and then they genetically put those nutrients back in. So that's why it's highly important you look for unbleached and you make sure that it has just that flour as the only ingredient. So here's the two flours that you're gonna need. Also, dry yeast. If you have fresh yeast, I envy you. I wish I did, but I live in Tampa, Florida, and nowhere around here can you buy fresh yeast. But all you can use is this. This is fine, dry yeast. You're gonna need 1.5 cups of warm water, and then you're gonna need some salt. Very simple, so here we go. All you're gonna do is you're gonna take 2 teaspoons of the dry yeast and put it in a mixing bowl. So there's 2. You're then gonna add 2.5 teaspoons of your salt. And this is a ground sea salt that I'm using. I prefer that over the table salt. It's just a little more natural as well. So 2.5 teaspoons. And then to activate the yeast, you're gonna take your 1.5 cups of warm water and you're gonna pour it in there. And then I like to just kind of take a fork and stir it around to help the yeast kind of dissolve and start to activate. The warmth is what makes the yeast activate. So fortunately here in Florida, we have plenty of heat that makes this really easy. So I don't know if you can see this, but it just looks like really gross, mucky water because the yeast is starting to get activated by the heat. Once you have that stirred, it doesn't have to be completely dissolved. You're just kind of blending the ingredients. The simple part, if you want to do all whole wheat, you can. The only reason that I mix it is because when you're going 100% whole wheat flour and not the enriched and bleached and all that stuff, it becomes very dry and kind of crumbly, where if you use an all-purpose organic unbleached flour that's a little it's not your white flour, but it's a little closer to that consistency, then you'll get an actual bread texture. So I do half and half. So what you're gonna need is 1.5 cups. So I have 1 1/4, so I'll be doing 1 and 2 scoops of each of these. And then the last, I guess, like quarter, I just kind of go back and forth and mix it up. So we're gonna do 1.5 of the whole wheat flour. This is a quarter. There's half. And then 1 cup. So you don't have to be perfect in the measurement, but I mean, try and get as close as possible, because if it's too dry, we can fix it. If it's too moist, we can fix it. It's not a big deal. So we have 1.5 of the 100% wheat. And then we're gonna do 1.5 of the all-purpose organic flour. I've been getting over a cold the last week, so I apologize if my voice is cracking or the sniffling. Whew, flour's flying. That's when you know you're baking, is when flour's going everywhere. 1 1/4, so we have 1 more of these, and that'll give us 1.5. As you can see, this isn't perfect white like a bleached flour, but it's still, I mean, it looks like white flour. It looks like white dough. It's just better for you. So we're now at 3 cups total, 1.5, 1.5. I then just do like half a scoop of the quarter and sprinkle some of this from here, just as like a top it off, I guess. So there we go. This is like barely even a quarter of a cup. And then I do the same thing here. You don't have to do that. It's just like one of those quirks that I like to do to make sure it's all nice and evenly blended. Okay, so now this is the fun part. I have this on hand when I'm making my own dough, because instead of butter, olive oil is definitely much more natural, and like everything else that I've shown you, when you get olive oil, believe it or not, there's other stuff that's in there, so you want to look at the ingredient list and make sure that it says just extra virgin olive oil. There shouldn't be anything else. But anyways, this I like to pour on my hands a little bit before we get into the dough. It keeps the dough from sticking really bad for you. People use butter as well. You can also use butter. I just like this because it kind of goes with the bread. It doesn't change the flavoring of it. But to start, you're just going to take a fork. So this is kind of what it looks like starting out. Looks like a big pile of just gunk. But I promise, it's really good. So you're going to stir it. It might look kind of crumbly. As you can see, it's kind of like crumbles. It's not stirring perfectly. This is just kind of to get the main moisture part of it mixed in there. All right, so when it starts to look like this, kind of like it's mixed but it's not mixed, that's when you're just gonna kind of wipe the fork off, get your olive oil. This is the fun part. Your kids would love to help this. Pour just a little. So as you can see, it's like maybe a teaspoon. It's like you're washing your hands with it, because it's gonna make it a lot easier to mess with the dough. And you're literally gonna get in there and try and mix the rest of that together with your hands. So it doesn't have to necessarily be kneading just yet, but you're gonna mix the rest of it together. So I'm just kind of like scraping the sides, pushing it in there, because you can't really form it. You can see, this is what my dough looks like. It doesn't look very pretty. That's okay. If some of you guys are super professional bakers watching this, you're probably gonna tell me that I'm doing this wrong. But it's all right. Everybody has their own way of baking and mixing, so really, it's just about you doing it the way you want to do it, whatever works for you. So as you can see, I'm kind of starting to knead it now, only because it's easier to mix it in the bowl. So what you need, if you do it in a bowl instead of a counter, it can be a little difficult, but it's actually pretty simple. What you do when you knead is you're going to fold 1/2 of it onto the other half, and then you kind of want to just push it out flat. It's going to stick, just like that. And then you're gonna fold another half, push it in. The whole time, basically, you're doing like a fold, push it in there, fold another side, push it in there. It kind of needs it. So as you can see, it's sticking to my hands a little bit. Your dough should not be super sticky. If it is, excuse me, all you have to do is add some more flour. It just means the moisture's a little off, and sometimes depending on where you live, the consistency is going to be different because we all have different humidity levels. So I'm going to add a little bit of flour, not a lot. This is 1/4 of a cup, and I probably did about half of the 1/4 of the cup. So I just put it on top. I'm going to now work that in there to see if I can kind of get some of that moisture to go out a little bit, so it's a little more doughy for me. coming together a little bit, starting to look a little more like dough. So I have it on the flip side, I just folded it. Put a little more in there. Yeah, now it's starting to mix a little bit better and looking a little more like dough. It's been hot here, so could just be the yeast. I don't know. Dough comes out different all the time. So if you mess up, don't worry about it. It's easy to fix. If it's too dry, so if you have the opposite, because that has happened to me too, all you have to do, of what I suggest, instead of adding more water to make it blend a little bit easier, pour a little bit of the olive oil in there and work the olive oil in there. It'll give it a nice flavor. It'll keep it nice and moist. All right, so my dough is almost there. So as you can see, like when I'm touching this, it's kind of like, still feels super sticky, not as sticky. So I'm gonna add a little more flour, just a little. That's about it. I just sprinkled that on there, and I'm gonna work this in here one last time. So the point of kneading is that it helps activate the yeast. Not only does it mix your ingredients, it gets your yeast nice and activated. It gets it that pretty nice like dough that you would buy at the store, but now you don't have to. So yeah, so here's what's gonna happen is you're gonna have it in kind of like a nice ball consistency. And it's, I mean, if it's super sticky, then keep adding flour. It shouldn't be too crazy sticky, but see how thick that is? You do want it to be nice and thick, not runny. But what you're gonna do, I have it all over my hands. If this happens to you too, all you have to do, put a little flour in your hands, rub your hands together, and it's called cleaning your hands the Italian way. It just kind of dries it up so it comes off a little bit easier. But so, once you have this, and it's all nice and mixed, all you're gonna do is you're gonna take a dish towel, kitchen towel, doesn't really matter, whatever you have hanging around. Hopefully it's clean, don't use anything dirty. There we go. Well, I'm gonna need this a little bit more. But you're gonna take a kitchen towel. Now, my hand dough is all mixed in there. And you're gonna tightly seal this. So all that means, it's really tricky, so watch closely. You're gonna put this over top here, make sure that it covers the whole bowl. You're then gonna tuck the bottom so that it's kind of airtight. And you're gonna leave this like this for about an hour, because what's gonna happen is your dough is going to double in size. You don't wanna touch it until it doubles in size. You can go watch a movie, you can do whatever you want. If it lasts a little bit longer, so if you have it to where this is like this for an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's fine. Depending, like I said, where you live, if it's warm, you want to keep it in a warm environment, but if it's cold inside your house, try placing it like I have next to the stove, or a place that does have a little bit of heat, because that heat and warmth is going to help activate the yeast, make the dough rise like you always hear about. And then we're going to come back to this, so I'm going to let this sit for about 30-45 minutes, because like I said, it's hot. And I'll come back and then I'll show you what you do after your dough has risen. See you shortly. Alright guys, it's been about an hour since we paused the video and we wrapped our dough for the fresh bread in this nice little professional covered kitchen cloth. But, so now I'm going to show you how simple it is once your dough does rise. First things first, you need to preheat your oven to 450 degrees, and you want to have it on the middle rack in there, so you don't want it too close to the top or too close to the bottom. I like to do this first because usually when you let bread rise, you end up having to let the yeast kind of calm down a little bit before you can put it in the oven. So it's going to be super puffy when we open it up. Then we're going to put it on here, let it kind of like relax a little bit before we let it rise again in the oven. So that usually takes a few minutes, or I like to have that happen first, and then we'll go through this. So one thing that you will still need is the olive oil. First thing you're going to do, this is a really crappy pan that I have, but it just goes to show it's really not about what you have. But so you're going to take your olive oil and you're going to drizzle this on here, or you can just put it in the middle. So dump, I guess about like a table to 2 tablespoons in here. It's not a ton, it's mostly just to keep the bread from sticking to the pan. I use my hand because then when you're done with the pan, you're going to just rub it on your hands and you're going to use it to pull the dough out. Your dough, it's like a big surprise, should be, pretty big and puffy. If not, if you're not there yet, pause the video, wait a little bit longer until it does thicken up a little bit, and then come back and start at this point. So we're gonna check on mine. Yep. All right, you see how like big that is compared to is about half that size about an hour ago. So that's exactly how yours should be. If it gets bigger, that's fine. It doesn't matter as long as the yeast does rise. What I like to do at this point is you can use all of this to make one big loaf of bread, but if you're not planning on eating bread that often, what I do is I try and cut this in about a little less than half, so about 3/4 on one side. You can see it's just like a nice grapefruit size almost. Tear that off, let that sit there for a second, maybe a little bit more. And I'm gonna tell you why. So we'll take a little bit more out. Yeah, that should be about good. So what I do is I take about a softball size or grapefruit size of the dough and I put it away in Tupperware and then I just leave that alone. So there's two things you can do with this. What we do in our house, we'll put this away in the Tupperware, you can put it in the fridge and it's good for 3 or 4 days. So usually you want to cook it before the end of the week, but we may start the week making fresh bread and then Thursday, Friday night, we pull this dough back out, spread it out on a pizza pan, and you can make homemade pizza with fresh dough that you know exactly what's in the crust, what's in the ingredients, and it's super simple. You don't have to go back through this process because when you make pizza dough, you don't really need much more than about a softball size. And then we'll do a whole other video on that, on how you're just gonna push the dough out. But so anyways, I like to save just a little bit. You also, another thing too, if you're not gonna make pizza, you can also just save it so that way when you run out of the fresh bread, because fresh bread does not last for months and weeks on end like other breads do. So just so you can see this full size, as I added a little bit more in both hands, that's about how big this is for the pizza dough. So I'm gonna set this aside for now. I'm gonna save that for the rest of the week. But, so as you can see, it's already kind of started to calm down a little bit with the yeast. I'm gonna take this out because this is gonna be the bread. It shouldn't be super sticky in your hands. It might be a little bit, but you have that olive oil on there. If you need some more, just kind of touch the pan. And what you're gonna do is, I call it making like a Hershey's Kiss or making like a little mushroom cap. So you want one side of your dough to be nice and smooth. That's the bread side. That's the part that's really pretty that everybody sees. So to do that, you're gonna kind of just make like a little pinch at the top. You're gonna take, because as you can see, hopefully, as you can see, it's like got like chunks and it's all uneven. So we're gonna kind of smooth that out to make it pretty. So you're gonna take little pieces of it, and as you can see, I'm just kind of like pinching it all together so it's sealing this off. So you're sealing off your dough, sealing it off, sealing it off. So it's like, now you can see it. It's all pinched at the top. It's like a Hershey's Kiss almost. And then what you're gonna do, once that's pinched off, you're gonna flip it over, and now you have a nice smooth side for your bread. Makes sense? Hopefully you can see that it's nice and smooth. So that way your bottom can be bumpy and whatever, and it doesn't really matter. So now what you're gonna do, you're gonna kind of shape it. What kind of bread do you like? Do you like it like big, like ciabatta? Do you like it just like a loaf, nice and rectangle? Do you want to cut it in or make it into small little miniature rolls? It's really up to you. I prefer it in kind of a mix between ciabatta and a regular type of loaf. So all you're gonna kind of do is just kind of like use your hands on the outside to kind of pull it and stretch it just a little bit. Not too much because you'll start to reactivate the yeast. So as you can see, I'm just kind of stretching it out. I like to have it a little bit wider. Pushing it out a little bit more. There's a few air bubbles. I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of gross. But a few air bubbles, sometimes what you can do is you can push all the way down in the center of this and reshape it, and what it does is it pushes all the air out. Usually, I don't really care too much about the air bubbles in there, so we'll just go with it because you're gonna do something in a second that's gonna fix that anyways. All right, so we kind of have our shape. I did forget one thing. You are gonna need your flour for a second, so let me grab that. All right, so here's our flour. The only reason you need this is just so you can put slits in the top of it. So just use your hand, literally just a pinch. You're gonna kind of sprinkle it on top. Then just take your hand and kind of smooth it over. See how it's nice and smooth? And then you're gonna take a serrated knife. So it doesn't have to be super sharp or anything fancy, just something that has some edges on it. And you're gonna make 3 tiny slits. So 1, 2, and 3. And what this is gonna do, as you can already start to see, is that gives that like nice kind of fan look on the loaf of bread whenever you get at a restaurant that's got like the 3 lines on top of it, because when it breaks up, it's gonna start to expand in there. So now that these are split up, our oven's preheating, 450. You're gonna put the pan in there for 20 minutes. Time it for 20 minutes. Any longer and your bread starts to dry out. Any less and it's super doughy and mushy. So I'm gonna pop this in the oven and I'll come back in 20 minutes and we'll look at the final result. Hey guys, so it's been exactly 20 minutes from where I paused the video before, so the bread is done. It smells amazing. I hope yours smells the exact same. So we're gonna see what it looks like. Obviously, use an oven mitt. I mean, not that I haven't done that. Oh, looks awesome. Ignore my ugly pan. But, so remember those little slits we made? That's what the 3 slits are for, to give that kind of ciabatta look. It's got that nice like dusted flour look. It's actually a loaf as opposed to what it looked like when we first put it on. Normally I would let this cool before cutting into it just because it's so freaking hot. But I'm really excited just to see how it turned out. Use your serrated knife that you made the little holes with. Use an oven mitt or a towel to hold on to this because it's super hot. But we're gonna cut into it. It's gonna be crunchy on the outside and then nice and soft on the inside, which is like the best bread ever. And mine's sticking to the pan, but that's okay. Oh, God, it's so hot. All right, I don't know if you can see the steam coming off of this. All right, you can see it though. Look at how perfectly fluffy the bread is on the inside. It's nice and soft. I can't show you other than this. But then on the outside, you have a nice crispy crust. So it's perfect. I use this for toast. It's the perfect bread if you have people over for dinner and you do just a little bit of olive oil with some basil, salt, and pepper, some dipping bread oils. But then also in the morning, like, just put some butter on it. It's delicious. But anyways, that is how you make fresh bread with less than 5 ingredients. So much better for you. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe. Let me know if you have another recipe that you want to learn how to make. Also, be sure to head to ashleydrummons.com or abspancakes.com where we're bringing you more workouts, more fitness, nutrition, and all those other amazing lifestyle things. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.